Righty-ho. Hello and welcome to another edition of Mjolnir the Movies. This particular edition we're going to be looking at Frank Capra's Lost Horizon. Now, we haven't looked at Frank Capra as a director at all, either in this incarnation of Mjolnir the Movies or the previous one. So this is the first, and it's been forgotten how big Frank Capra was in Hollywood, I think. I don't know, did you look at Frank Capra the man at all?
Yeah, I saw something interesting there. He had a lot of war propaganda films as well.
That's right. It was the, what was it called? In Which We Serve or something like that was the series of war propaganda films.
Why We Serve.
Why We Serve, that's right.
It was like 7 films.
Yeah, absolutely. He made war propaganda. It's been forgotten that he actually won 3 Oscars for Best Director.
Wow.
And was nominated 6 times. So that's how big he was. Although he fell out of favor later on in Hollywood. Strangely, actually, because, he fell foul of McCarthyism to a degree, first off. Now, McCarthy, of course, who led this crusade, for want of a better word, against communism in the film industry. And there was communism in the film industry, let's be honest. But Capra wasn't one of them. But he did work with certain scriptwriters and so on who were indeed communists, although unbeknownst to him. So I suppose he was put in a difficult position, really. Certainly he was very antipathetic to the cultural Marxism that came into Hollywood later. And he certainly despised stuff like gratuitous violence, homosexuality, and also, hardcore sex and all that being put on screen. And he talked about the degeneration of cinema. So he certainly was actually more on McCarthy's side than he was on the communists. He actually got a film banned, which is incredible, actually, when you look at it. We'll probably look at the film another time anyway, which is It's a Wonderful Life. Now, the idea that they would ban that film as un-American is quite extraordinary. But anyway.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that film as well. I can't remember why, but that's one of his films, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it's one of Capra's films, and it's probably these days his most famous film, because it's put on every, and I'm going to say the word Christmas because it is a Christmas film, and it's very much about the so-called Christmas spirit, the American Christmas spirit, if you like.
Right.
And so, I'm surprised actually that you haven't watched it. Or at least seen clips from it.
I must have seen clips of it because the name rings a bell.
It's a hugely influential film, and as I say, it appears all the time at Christmas time on television, during the Yuletide period, with Jimmy Stewart, who was enormous back then as the lead actor. And it's referenced so often in popular culture. So, as I say, I'm surprised that you've not really seen anything of it. You must have done and not realised that it's that.
Yeah, we might have to do a rerun and do that one instead next time. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, we'll. I think when we get to the season, we'll cover it at that point.
Yeah, that's better.
But to come back to this particular film, Lost Horizon, that we're looking at in this particular episode, it's actually based on a novel which came out just a couple of years before this started filming. I think it started filming in 35, and the novel came out in 33, and then this was released in 37. So it was pretty contemporary at that time to the novel by James Hilton, although things have been changed a little, particularly the characterization. What do you think about the characterization? I'll start off with that, I think.
I thought it was pretty good. I would be able to make a better comparison if I had read the books. Or the book by, who was it by again?
James Hilton.
Yeah, James Hilton. But I did hear that there was a bit of a, different characterization. But that was through also because the film, there was different editions of it that was brought out as well. Times were removed and certain scenes and stuff like that. I thought the characters were pretty good. I don't know if the Russian lady who was sick, I don't know if that was a correct characterization, but I thought it was pretty well done.
I think you're conflating two characters there. The girl who was sick was an American. The woman who was sick, that's what's she called now? Gloria, I think. And then there's, is it Maria who's the Russian woman?
Oh, right. There you go.
So, but yeah, I think I am a little disappointed at the characterization. I'll be honest. I think that they're stock characters and they serve a purpose, which is the narrative. It's very much a narrative driven film. I'll be honest. I'm nothing against that. But the characterization is quite flat, I find, particularly, as I've talked about, Gloria, whose role it seems in the film is to be cynical. In fact, if you look at three of the characters, their role is really to be cynical about the whole thing, about Shangri-La and so on, which is, Barnard, Lovett, and Gloria, and they're the sort of cynical characters. And Gloria's role is basically, she's got a terminal disease of some description, and her role is to get better. And the other two, Barnard and Lovett, is to become more altruistic. That's their role in, they're cynical and to become more altruistic. That's their role in the film.
True.
So I think that they're very flat characters. And then you have Robert Conway, who's basically a Mary Sue. I don't know. Did you get that impression, or do you have a completely different take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Conway does have that about him. But I thought the character arcs were pretty good, given how the film progressed, how they were all quite, apprehensive about the place, and then before you know it, Bernard's making plans to, fix up Shangri-La and stuff like that. But the interesting character really was, Conway's brother, George. Because he always wanted to escape the place and then takes one of the women, out from the place as well. But Yeah, I thought Robert was just that typical representation of a English gentleman, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we go right to the beginning of the film, he gets aggrandized straight away in this little, it's sort of a storybook. I've actually read the script. There you go. I'm doing my homework here, you know. I read the script, and the script says, this is right at the beginning. Close up of an impressive looking book. The covers open and the pages turn. The first page reads, in these days of wars and rumors of wars, haven't you ever dreamed of a place where there was peace and security, where living was not a struggle but a lasting delight? The second page reads, of course you have. So has every man since time began, always the same dream. Sometimes he calls it utopia, sometimes the fountain of youth, sometimes merely that little chicken farm. The third page reads, one man had such a dream and saw it come true. He was Robert Conway, England's man of the East, soldier, diplomat, public hero. So there you have him sort of aggrandized from the very beginning. And you'll note that the first words are close up of an impressive looking book. So, you know, the idea is that, you know, that this is, well, the whole story is going to be impressive, and this character is particularly impressive in it. You know, and you have soldier, diplomat, public hero. So, you know, it's very much there from the beginning that this is the guy that you are cheering for, and that's it.
Yeah, he's definitely the hero, right?
Yeah. Eve.
I mean, he eventually becomes the High Lama, so.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
That part was quite
Sorry, that part was what, sorry?
It was quite absurd, the whole High Lama. the guy was, he was like a Catholic, priest or something like that, I think.
Yeah, that's right. For people who haven't seen this film, there will be spoilers from here on in. This guy, do you want to talk about the sort of idea behind this film, and the role of this High Lama?
Well, the kind of the central idea is that, you know, the High Lama, he's kind of dying, and it turns out that, you know, Conway is here to fulfill sort of a prophecy perhaps that they have of him being, you know, as you said in the opening scene, this, really reputable man, who can replace this High Lama who's dying as well, which is interesting because in Shangri-La, you know, time really doesn't pass at all, and people don't get old and die. And in this Shangri-La place, it's a harmonious place, you know, untouched by like time and conflict, and, you know, time isn't measured in years, but centuries. But yeah, the whole High Lama figure, just a old guy who's dying, and it's weird to see that, you know, they're supposed to be in Tibet, and there's just this, European, Catholic priest there. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's right. It's sort of the big reveal about halfway through, isn't it? That, because earlier in the narrative, this guy Chang, who's their host, we have to mention that this small party of people, they crash in the Himalayas somewhere, and then they're brought to this place, Shangri-La, which is in this valley, the Valley of the Blue Moon, if I remember rightly, where time passes extremely slowly, as you've mentioned, and people age very, very slowly. And it was founded by this guy called or at least, the valley was discovered by this old Catholic priest called Father Perot, and he created the sort of infrastructure and everything that we see in the film. And this was back in 1713 or something. And then you've got this mysterious figure, the High Lama, which Robert Conway visits, and he realizes, of course, that he is actually Father Perot. And so you have that big reveal kind of thing, but because he was so old when he got there, he's lived for over 200 years, but now he's dying. So that's sort of the gist of it, and he wants Conway, of course, to take his place. It's interesting though that I mean you must have looked into the sort of philosophical side of all this, of what Perot, his ideas and so on, of what what his plans are and so on.
Not particularly about Father Perot. What do you have on that? Do you have anything on that?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting that the whole idea of Shangri-La is that everything works perfectly. And it works perfectly because everybody is nice to each other and there is plenty. And it's entirely based on a culture of happiness and on, I suppose, what Jeremy Bentham would call the greatest utility, which means the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. And it is very much a sort of liberal utilitarian philosophy at the back of all this. And there's also kind of hints of communism in there, which again, I can see why Capra was suspected at points. But liberalism, of course, does indeed touch on communism, especially when it gets to its utopian ideals. It very much touches on aspects of communism, which in turn touches on Christianity, which is why you've got Perot there.
Yeah. And there was a bit of controversy later on in the film, especially with Mao Zedong's China coming about. So I think they had to change the film a bit there, because the film was changed many times. It just depended on, the kind of ideas that they wanted to portray. But Perot he's definitely got that sort of figure about him. But isn't he concerned as well that the further that they go into this eternal life, the more that it may lead to spiritual stagnation in a way, where they might get away from the spirituality with all this time that they have, or at least maybe the Christian side of it?
Well, I'll quote what he actually says, because it's an interesting speech. And it shows you, as I say, how liberalism and communism both tap into Christianity. I'm not the first one to have seen the connection between communism and Christianity. Slavoj Žižek, the very famous leftist philosopher, if you can call him that, he talks about it himself when he's not salivating and off his head on crack cocaine,
Good.
He wants to see revolutions in Colombia again, so that the communists can take control of the cocaine trade from the CIA again. That's what he's all about. Anyway.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, anyway, Perrault's speech, where he says, look at the world today. Is there anything more pitiful? What madness there is, what blindness, what unintelligent leadership. A scurrying mass of bewildered humanity, crashing headlong against each other, propelled by an orgy of greed and brutality. The time must come, my friend, when this orgy will spend itself, when brutality and the lust for power must perish by its own sword. Against that time is why I avoided death, and am here, and why you were brought here. For when that day comes, the world must begin to look for a new life. And it is our hope that they may find it here. For here we shall be with their books and their music and a way of life based on one simple rule: be kind. When that day comes, it is our hope that the brotherly love of Shangri-La will spread throughout the world. Yes, my son, when the strong have devoured each other, the Christian ethic may at last be fulfilled, and the meek shall inherit the earth. So,
Jeez.
yeah.
There you go.
So this is what we always say about Christianity, in that they're always tearing down the strong. They're always seeing them as evil. They're always seeing they want them to kill each other, basically, so that then these weak people can have the earth, and that is what you see in liberalism. We talk about weak leadership now in the West, of course. And this is a legacy of Christianity. And of course it doesn't lead to Shangri-La at all.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It would just lead to complete anarchy, really.
Yeah, because
it just remove all the structures and stuff like that.
Yeah, it has a completely odd view of human nature, which essentially is animal nature. But liberals, like Christians, they have this belief, which is based on stuff and nonsense, that we are different from animals somehow. Well, we're not. I presume you believe in things like evolution, which Christians like Mel Gibson do not. They believe that basically this Jewish deity created man and put him on earth as is to have mastery over the animals. Well, everything points to that being absurd.
And even the book itself, like the Old Testament, the Torah, it's got nothing to do with this idea of peace. But it's kind of what Perrault said: when the strong devour the strong, then the meek shall inherit the earth. Then there's peace, right? And that's kind of the whole, like, a theme that goes all throughout the Bible, is just war upon war, Christians believing in end times, where, the only salvation is when everything's evil, which is kind of the thing about Christians as well, is some of them believe that when the whole world is evil, then, Jesus Christ will come and restore order in the world. But for Jesus Christ to come, there has to be this evil everywhere. The whole thing is it's very strange, really. You just have to read the book.
Yeah, that's right. But it's again, you see the sort of parallels with communism. in that they're always talking about the revolution. After all the bloodshed and the terror and so on, then there will be utopia.
Yeah, it's just absurd. Absolutely absurd.
Yeah, so you get that in very much foregrounded in this film. And one must remember that it is a film, and you can show anything on a reel of film. You know, you can show a man flying. But of course, men can't fly. And this, I mean, you can create, idyllic places, but they would never be based upon this nonsense, because you would have to keep people out. You'd have to keep bad people out. And of course, there are certain things in this film that are extraordinarily convenient. One is, of course, that the place is very hard to get to and is secluded, and so people don't know how to get there or how to find it. So that protects it naturally from any sort of barbaric enemies or something who will come knocking on the gates. The other is that we find out that there is gold in abundance in that there valley, which is incredibly convenient, because then they can buy anything and import stuff and so on. And, for example, where did they get all that concrete that they created? The architecture based on the precepts of Le Corbusier. Because that's what it is. If you read Le Corbusier's 5 Points on Architecture, the entire set, because it is basically a set in Columbia Studios, is built on those precepts. So it's entirely modernist. Even though this was meant to have been created, one would imagine, not long after Father Perrault arrived. But the horizontal windows, the slim pillars, the flat roofs, the blending of so with the flat roofs you can have gardens on them and so on. And the open plan spaces, all those kind of things come from Le Corbusier, and he got them from I can't remember the name of the architect who he was inspired by, but anyway, I'm sort of getting off off the subject here. But if you look, there's an interesting sort of comparison that you can make, because if you look at the Villa Savoy in Poissy in France, which was designed by Le Corbusier, and you look at that set, you will see great parallels there. So again, we've got modernist ideas here, and we've got modernist architecture to go with them. Oh yeah, that's right. Le Corbusier is inspired by Eugène Viollet-le-Duc. That's him, Le-Duc. I remember now. But anyway.
But yeah, definitely, it has that modern touch to it. It's not like you're in, an ancient place here in Tibet. You've got all the trinkets, the cutlery, the chairs. I suppose only the garments that they're wearing are quite, Eastern as well. And also on that utopia note, you have them sitting at the dinner table being served by, Tibetans, like indigenous Tibetans as well. So there's still this, slave master kind of thing going on there behind the scenes of the film as well.
Yeah, very much so. There's all this equality that's not really equality, is it? It's got all the equality of Animal Farm, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, right. Some animals are more equal than others.
Yeah, that's right. Which is, again, the communist idea and the Christian idea as well, because you look at the church and there is hierarchy, and there are people at the bottom and there are people at the top. So
yeah, priestly class.
That's right. And this Father Perot is running things as a dictatorship, and he wants a new dictator to follow him. A liberal dictator. Where have we heard this before? Liberal dictators. Anyway. But yeah. So there is again this, this sort of spiel, this patter that does not reflect how things really are.
Well, that's the whole utopia concept, isn't it? And I was going to ask about, I'm sure you've read the book, I think it's by Thomas More.
Oh yes, Utopia, that's right, yeah, Thomas More, I read it years ago, yeah.
That was one of the first books to bring about this idea of this idyllic place, right?
Yeah, that's right, although there has been debate as to how idyllic it actually is. I remember that the criminals are branded on the forehead or something like that in Utopia, if I remember rightly.
I have to read it again.
Yes,
because I read it.
Yeah, it's 20 years since I read it, so. But
it's a really old text as well. I've also got another book here, The Modern Utopia by H.G. Wells. I've only just started reading it though, but I was wondering how, are they similar? Do they compare, or are these ideas just up for interpretation depending upon the people?
Well, Wells is a radical socialist, so
yeah, definitely.
So he was in the Fabian Society and everything. So he, I think, would actually be very much in favor of Lost Horizon. I can't remember if he died in 1941. I think it was 41 that Wells died. So he may have read the book or seen the film. Be interesting to see what he thought of it, if he actually wrote anything about the book or the film. But certainly with Wells, you can see what he thought, his idea of a utopian vision in the shape of things to come. Which is, his, utopian vision based on technological progress.
Yeah, which is also in his book, the Time Machine, right? Which was then adapted into a film. Was it by Spielberg? I can't remember. I think Spielberg might have done that movie.
I don't know if Spielberg did it. I know there are a few versions of it. There's one from the 1950s, which, none of the versions have actually stuck to the original book, because both the Eloi and the Morlocks are completely inhuman. They've developed, they've evolved from humans to become something, not human as we know it. Whereas, in the 1950s film, the Eloi are still human looking, but the Morlocks aren't. and so he has this, so he has this nice girl and everything was an Eloy, and so on. But that's certainly not the case in the book.
Right.
And then in the I think it's early 2000s. It's with Guy Pearce in the lead role, and the Eloy are all mulattoes, and the the Morlocks are evil white guys with huge brains. So, yes,
we can't get
no woke propaganda going on there at all, is there? Anyway.
Yeah, no.
This whole term woke, woke's been going on for a long, long time. People don't even realize it. But anyway, we're getting off the subject. In fact, this could actually be considered as early woke, in many ways. Because I'll tell you what woke is, really. All woke is basically before woke, what you had is propaganda, but you had nice little narratives over it that people could get into and so on. And post woke, all they did was they took the narratives away and said to the audience, fuck you, you're not getting you're nice, you're not going to enjoy it at all anymore. You're not going to get any enjoyment out of this. You might have had your stories and so on. Your nice little story. No, we're not going to give you that anymore. We're just going to give you the fucking propaganda and you're going to like it and fuck you. That's basically what it is. That's what woke is.
It's very true, yeah.
So in this, you get a certain amount of miscegenation propaganda. Do you notice that?
With who?
With Lovett and Barnard and the native girls.
Yes, indeed. It's got that it's the whole trope of the natives are a novelty to these people, which is interesting as well. Because I don't think, this is an American film and they weren't really promoting that in America, at least, right? Was this during the segregation?
Oh yes, I mean this is 1937. Yeah.
Wow. Huh. I wonder if that raised any concern over the film.
It's interesting.
It might have been overlooked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be overlooked here because they've lost some of the footage of that particular part of the film. And there's just the stills and the dialogue. But in the stills and the dialogue, you can very much see it. And on the script, if you read the script. And there is also, another thing is the huge age disparity between the two male characters and the native girls. So, there's very much I mean, in some ways, I suppose, the left would talk about, this, sort of, colonialism, a certain colonialist attitude to it.
Oh yeah, definitely. What about the scene when the woman is teaching all the native children how to be a bit more westernized or a bit more English,
Yeah, but it's funny that actually, because that's exactly how liberals think. They always think that everybody should be liberals.
Yeah.
So, so it's perfectly in keeping actually with liberalism, but it is imperialist at the same time. It is culturally imperialist. And it started, of course, with Europeans. Firstly through Christianity, which is not a European religion at all. It's a Semitic
No.
religion. And then secondly, from there, through liberalism, we've had these certain ideas foisted upon us, and they're not good ideas for our survival, as we're finding out now. And certainly they do not lend to creating utopias, as we found out on our streets.
Yes, indeed. Very much so. So what do you think would comes out of this liberalism? Is there maybe a horseshoe theory where, certain things meet in the middle? Two extremes kind of do that, or?
How do you mean by that exactly? What do you mean that the further left you go, the nearer you get to the far right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well that's one case, or just, what's the end of the road for this liberalism? This obsession of individual rights and, really communistic. What's the sort of, is it just another thing of, the Bolshevik Revolution or Mao Zedong or Cambodia?
Well, I think, there are certain things that liberalism has that are different from communism. Communism is a collectivist ideology. Liberalism purports to be individualistic, but it's actually collectivist in reality, because the whole idea of liberalism is to make everybody liberals, and that's something that people haven't really understood about liberalism. That for liberalism to work, in theory, we're talking about the theory, everybody has to be a liberal. Because you can't create a society in any case unless people have a shared set of values. And of course, if you want to create a liberal society, then the shared set of values that they have to have are liberal ones. And that's the same in any society, but the liberals, they purport that it's different, that everybody are going to be individuals. Well, that's nonsense, because societies can't work like that. You won't have a society if everybody's pulling in different directions.
True.
So, this is why when they go, oh, you're a collectivist. I am a collectivist. I'm a racial collectivist. Because generally, if you have like people, in other words, people who are genetically alike, people will share a very similar kind of set of values in any case, because they're alike. Whereas the idea of liberals is that everyone basically has to be socialized into liberal ideas, because you have completely disparate peoples racially in this shared society. And that's the same in Shangri-La as well, where you have sort of Chinese people, you have a Russian person in there, so sort of Eurasian. You have American and English people and so on. You have American and English people. And Father Perot is obviously a French Catholic, and so. But the idea is, as Chang says at some point, is that basically it's all based on this idea of everybody being nice to each other. Well, you can't always be nice to people, because sometimes something is in your interest but not another person's. Especially if, like for example, I got something written down here, which is what Chang says. I've actually got the script. I'm just getting to it. So if you just bear with me a moment while I flick through. Hang on. I'm flicking through the wrong bit, that's why. Yeah, so Conway asks Chang, how about law and order? You have no soldiers or police. And Chang says, oh, good heavens, no. And Conway asks, how do you deal with incorrigibles, criminals? Why, we have no crime here. What makes a criminal? Lack, usually, avariciousness, envy, the desire to possess something owned by another. There can be no crime when there is a sufficiency of everything. And Conway asks, you have no disputes over women? And Chang says, only very rarely. You see, it would not be considered good manners to take a woman that another man wanted. Well, that's crazy talk. Because what do the men do then? Do they both say, well, neither of us are going to have that woman?
True. There has to be some sort of competition, right? A pecking order, because that's nature, isn't it? The bird with the brightest feathers.
Yeah, so Conway retorts, suppose somebody wanted her so badly that he didn't give a hang if it was good manners or not. And Chang smiles, of course, yes. Well, in that event, it would be good manners on the part of the other man to let him have her. But which is the other man here? Because you have two men wanting the same thing.
Yeah. Well,
so,
there you go.
What happens? Does the other man say, no, you have it, and the other man says, no, you have it, you have it? It's a completely unresolved, conclusion, but of course then the scene ends. And so the audience has to be satisfied with this little quip. But it's a quip that doesn't resolve the question. So there are a lot of things that are not resolved, but you have a sort of smart little one-liner, but it doesn't really mean anything if you actually go into it a little bit. And that's how liberalism is. It is a completely superficial ideology that has no explanation for anything, it has no answers for things, but it does have a lot of little one-liners and little quips. Christopher Hitchens was very good at that. Instead of actually giving some kind of deep and philosophical answer that resolves something, he would make a little snide remark, or he would, make a joke out of it, or turn it around on the person asking the question. They're just tricks. They're just rhetorical tricks, but it's not philosophy. It's just mealy-mouthed, haggling over language and so on at the end of the day. And as I say, these people have no real deep thinking, because they are afraid to address fundamental questions about human existence.
Yeah, well, as long as you're nice to one another, you'll be fine.
Yeah, which is what it comes down to. But you can't always be nice to each other. And you look at the things going on in Israel-Palestine at the moment, when both sides believe that stretch of land is theirs. and adamant that it belongs to them. And it can never be resolved.
Yeah, no, and we have the same thing in Australia. You know, we have the Indigenous Aboriginals saying it's our land, and then the whites saying it's our land, we built it. You know, this same rhetoric where there's, you know, no compromise. But the Israel-Palestine one's very different, though.
Yeah, it isn't that different when you look at it. Personally, I think that the Aboriginals should have their own very generous stretch of land in Australia. I mean, the Aboriginals didn't inhabit the whole of Australia in any case.
I mean, they virtually do. You know, they've got massive plots of land, really. It's just up to them to organize themselves. But, you know, their organizations are very corrupt, much like, you know, the Palestinian organizations, you know, where people extort, you know, desperate people, or just like with Lost Horizon and Shangri-La, these utopian ideals, just as you said, that aren't really based on any sort of, philosophy or, actual premise either.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the premise and the philosophy, it's Christian, it's communist, it's liberal, it's precisely what we've got now, actually. Or at least it's what we're fed. But of course, it's not what the people governing us do. And the rapaciousness is ever worse with every line that they feed us of this garbage that is, you know, in our entertainment, like Lost Horizon.
Yeah, just completely idyllic, with no real basis. It's kind of like a free-for-all, really. You know, if someone were to take control of it, well, what would happen, you know? It's just, but it's a utopian, film, so they have to, and the book itself as well, so they have to entertain these ideas anyhow. But it's good to see, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, Father Perot lets it slip. He lets it slip at some point. How Machiavellian he actually is. Because he talks, he openly admits that Robert Conway was brought there. Now, of course, what happens in the beginning? What happens in the beginning is for them to be brought there, the plane is hijacked and the pilot murdered.
Yeah, it's true.
So that is completely glossed over. but someone's been murdered to bring Robert Conway to Shangri-La. Who seemed like a stand-up chap in the beginning. You know, he only had a couple of lines, but he seemed a very jolly and decent chap, and he was murdered by that Tibetan or whatever.
Yeah, by one of the tribes.
Yeah, that's right.
Was it by the Shangri-Larians or by one of the...
It was one of those native people, the barbarians who bring stuff to Shangri-La every so often.
Oh yeah, the merchants or whatever they are.
But he's been told by Father Perot to bring Robert Conway to Shangri-La. So this Father Perot has basically used him to go and hijack a plane and murder the pilot. And as I say, it's completely glossed over in the film. But I noted it straight away. Well, what's happened to the pilot? But this is the thing about liberals. They don't ask questions like that. They don't ask where stuff comes from as long as it comes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, as long as it's there and now. Perhaps lacking our foresight.
So, as I said, this film has fundamental flaws to it, even by its own standards. And I don't know, did you find it an enjoyable watch in general? That's a question.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I haven't really watched many films around this time period. But yeah, I thought it was good, and I thought the character arcs were alright. So certain things are pretty confusing, and out of place really, but I think that's just the given at that point in time. And I think maybe a very American interpretation of it as well.
Yeah, I found the whole narrative structure quite good until the end, when I thought that the ending was rushed, and it was so rushed that they had to basically do most of the ending in dialogue, which is one of the things you should never do. You should show, not tell. That's one of the things you're always taught as a writer. You show, you don't tell. So you have this meeting in this gentleman's club where they're basically discussing what Robert Conway is doing to get back to Shangri-La and so on. And you have the odd newspaper reels flashed in front of the screen and so on. But as I say, that's telling, it's not showing. And it's all very rushed towards the end, and then he gets back. It's all done in sort of a 5-minute, really, as I say, a really rushed narrative at the end there. And that to me was quite off-putting at the end. And the other flaw in narrative for me was this Russian girl who escapes with George, Robert's brother, and of course Robert is with them as well. And of course, because she leaves the valley, she ages, which is told about, and she doesn't believe. But again, there's something odd about that, because we're told earlier in the film that she comes to the valley as a 20-year-old in 1888. Well, she ages, I don't know, to the point where she dies. But if you do the maths, that only makes her in her late 60s. So she wouldn't be so old that she would die of old age.
Yeah, but definitely not straight away.
Yeah, she would age, but she wouldn't die of old age. She's only in her late 60s. So and then George, of course, throws himself off a cliff in horror.
Yeah.
And that's quite convenient for his brother, because then he can, he's got no ties anymore. He can go back to Shangri-La. He's a very unstable character, is George, the younger brother, anyway, and he sort of acts as this antagonist, and again, he's a servant to the plot, really. I don't mind that. You have films that are more character driven, and you have films that are more plot driven, and this is a plot driven one. But
Yeah,
I find him a bit hysterical, to be quite honest, George.
yeah, he is. He does have his points though about, this place is a bit creepy and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
He's a bit uncomfortable while he's there,
Yeah,
but also very erratic.
very what, sorry?
Erratic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's sort of the. You can't really put him down as a villain as such, but as I say, he's very much the antagonist to his brother, and it sort of builds his brother up as well. Because he's so sort of dependent on his brother, and he's of a low character, then, by comparison, the other brother is built up. Even, as I say, he's very much a Mary Sue. So, there is that, he has a certain function within the narrative. And, yeah, one of the last things, I don't know, is there anything else that you would like to talk about in the film before we sort of round up?
No, I thought it was a good film for the time. Maybe if they did it again, it would be good. But yeah, no, I thought it was good. I thought it was enjoyable. It was entertaining, and yeah, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah. It is an entertaining film. There's no doubt about that. It's a very different film, I think. Certainly not, I don't think you would get something like that produced in Hollywood now, because things have to be very formulaic.
You definitely wouldn't get an all-white. Yeah, and you wouldn't get an all-white cast either.
Well, it's interesting, actually. Yeah. I mean, you have Chang, of course, but he's played by a white guy, H.B. Warner.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
The only major Asian character, and you have him played by a white guy. So some liberals of today, the descendants of these liberals from yesteryear, would have a major problem with that. But it's interesting, actually, because there's a big rhetoric against whites in the film. As I say, there's the miscegenation propaganda, but equally, you have it right sort of near the beginning when, and again, of course, it's this, well, you have it first off, it's foregrounded, and it's the fourth page of the book at the very beginning. It says, our story starts in the war-torn Chinese city of Baskul, where Robert Conway has been sent to evacuate 90 white people before they are butchered in a local revolution. And so, it's foregrounding this white people. And then in the plane, when they've all been saved, these 90 white people, and Conway's on the plane talking to his brother, and Conway asks him, hello, Freshy, did you make that report out yet? And George says, yes, Bob. And then his brother Robert says, did you say we saved 90 white people, sneeringly? And George says, yes. And Conway says, hooray for us. Did you say that we left 10,000 natives down there to be annihilated? No, you wouldn't say that. They don't count. It goes up.
Not a bloody chance.
Yeah, well, of course you save your own people. Of course you save your own people. It's like, if there was civil unrest in Britain, there was some Chinese people there. The Chinese would try to save them. They wouldn't say, we must find out who are the decent English people down there and try to save them.
Yeah.
No, let's get our people out quickly because it's chaos down there.
Yeah, right.
So it's, as I say, it's got that, communistic, anti-white edge to it that the Earl of Portsmouth, who was writing at this time, talked about. The communist, sees a utopian vision without the white man.
Yes, indeed. Even though it was given to them by the same white people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Really?
But anyway, so I think we should wrap up unless there's something I think you wanted to add something on that. Did you?
No. Well, isn't it interesting how, first of all, they're saving the white people and then they get saved by the natives and then are escorted to Shangri-La? So there's this flip side to it as well, almost?
Well, yes and no, because the other 90 white people, they go to somewhere safe and nice. They get hijacked and taken to Shangri-La. But of course, it's Father Perot, who's a white person who is behind it all.
Yeah, interesting, hey? Yeah, but I thought it was a good film for the time, I like that time period as well because, yeah, I guess, Hollywood at that point in time was changing a lot and, you're getting up to the war years, World War II, and then the films that come out of that as well. So interesting, time period there as well.
Yeah, that's right. We've got, Nazism in full-fledged as well as communism, of course. So, and the different forms of fascism in places like Italy, Hungary to a degree, although, how much is fascistic? Greece, particularly, the Iberian Peninsula and so on. So, so yeah, you have, a lot of, different kinds of government and, in Britain, of course, it's, the various shades of liberalism that we've had in this country, really since the British Revolution of the middle of the 17th century. So, and people forget that.
With Mr. Capra.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we should leave it there. So, stay tuned for the next Mjolnir at the Movies when we will be discussing films old and new. Bye for now.